And we're live again on air today at the Rebel Labs interview with Oliver Gierke. He just finished his really slick session on Spring Data and state-of-the-art data access with Spring Data. That was really good. I enjoyed this immensely. The demo was astonishing. I was surprised actually at how awesome the patterns and the code looks with all the different databases that you support. So I'm really happy to talk to you now. Hi everyone that are listening to us on the Virtual Jack podcast, or people who are watching the video itself. Oliver Gierke can be found easily communicated to on Twitter by @Oliver Gierke, just the first name, surname, and he's a Spring Data project lead at Pivotal for 5 years now, and he's an open source enthusiast, musician, and producer of Soul Power. That's the Twitter bio.
Okay.
Oliver, how do you feel? How do you like the VJack session? And do you want to comment on that Soul Power?
Well, yeah. Sorry for that. That's just like some kind of, what is it, mantra or something that I took over from like when I was 15 or 16 or something. That's not really. I'm into music quite a bit, and I like some music, but that's just like, yeah, nonsense anyway.
Okay, let's take it as an internal joke, inside joke. Yeah. So how do you like the session?
I liked it quite a lot. I mean, as usual, it's like if you start talking, then time is running like hell, and you basically, I would have wanted to show like 10,000 features more, but it's good to have an introductory, like also recording for later reference, and if people just want to get familiar with what this Spring Data thing is in the very beginning and what it can do at the very, very, very opposite end, like in very advanced scenarios, like with what I showed with the REST stuff, then it's probably just a good overview and get pointers to where to look for more examples and whatnot. So, really great session, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, and Virtual Jack, one of the main benefits is that this recording goes instantly onto YouTube and is available for the reference exactly. As long as, well, YouTube exists. So. Let's get into the Blitz question round that we try to ask every speaker.
Yeah.
And you don't have to explain yourself if you don't think that's really relevant. So basically, yes or no, or just a choice answer is totally fine. So let's start. Is computer science a real science?
Yes. Yeah.
It is a real science. I agree. I agree. Do you prefer static or dynamic typing?
I grew up with Java, so static.
What is your favorite JVM language besides Java?
I like Groovy quite a lot.
Groovy or Ruby?
Groovy, yeah, Groovy.
Yeah,
I mean, despite my preference for static languages, I like Groovy quite a bit. Yeah.
That's awesome. What would you say is your favorite open source project? Just one.
Yeah. Okay. I like. I mean, Project Lombok.
That's a great choice.
Yeah.
It's a project that can simplify your code by providing your annotations and annotation access to different features and generates code on the fly for you.
Right.
Don't you find that actually breaks some IDE integrations, or is any progression has happened?
It doesn't do for me. I mean, there's still the some kind of entry hurdle that you have to get it into your IDE. And actually, I think there was a ticket trying to improve that, and there are things that could be improved in terms of that to get started with Lombok more easily. But once you actually got to it, you don't really want to code all these kinds of getters and setters anymore, or just to easily create value objects or delegates and whatnot. That's just so much easier. And the neat thing is you don't even have to like switch to an alternative language for that.
Yeah.
So Java's really like slick and elegant if you can just use Project Lombok.
Yeah, it becomes not verbose at all.
Yeah.
So okay, tell us a little bit about your setup. Do you use Mac or PC, and what's your favorite IDE?
I'm working on a MacBook Pro with a few external, like if I'm at home, I'm working from home, and with external displays attached to it. I'm using Eclipse. I've been constantly told to switch to IntelliJ, and I've tried a couple of times, but it usually feels like, I mean, it might be just like because I've been socialized with Eclipse and I'm so used to everything working there, and there's like certain things that like IntelliJ users might or probably think that are all totally awesome that I don't really get around with it. I have a few good friends at the Eclipse team anyway, so it's I just like, yeah, I'm comfortable with it. And just today, like an hour ago, Fred Brickern from Red Hat just helped me out with some bloody problem, which turned out to be my mistake with M2 Eclipse. And it's like it's just like, yeah, I always try to phrase it this way: if I knew something better for me, I would use it, and that's basically it. But
yeah,
I'm not dogmatic about this, so.
That's a great answer. You have a vast network of experts that you can leverage to
Exactly.
make Eclipse perfect for you. That's a great answer. I like that. So just a quick plug, since this is a Rebel Labs interview, we have a great report, the PDF report, how to start getting started with idea for Eclipse users. So if you tried a couple of times to switch and you really want to switch, but you are getting confused by different terms and lack of projects or with all the modules, maybe you should look at that. Because by Anton Arhipov. So he's a big currently he's ex-Rebel project lead, but he's a big idea fan, so that's good content. But yeah, let's finish with the common question that we ask. What do you think is the worst habit a programmer can have? What's the worst thing to do as a software developer?
Oh, the thing that like probably frustrates me most about other people, which doesn't, or other developers, which doesn't actually mean that I'm not suffering from that from time to time too, is not caring. So if you basically like touch or get your hands on other people's code and you feel like it's I mean, whether it's the code or it's just like your documentation or something, and you find things that you think that should have been taken care of, I have a low tolerance level for that kind of stuff. So let me phrase it the positive way around. I really appreciate if people care about stuff, and details matter mostly. So I think I can see those things in a lot of code that I see, and that even and if you got used to it, especially with working on the Spring framework, where the team really cares about every tiny bit. And there's this one anecdote where Jürgen rejected a piece of a change in GitHub where the order of the implements clauses wasn't correct. So it was implements interface 1, interface 2, and he was like, we should turn that around because the order actually reflects something. So it's the order of which methods are invoked in which order, what have you. So it's basically like having people around you that work with that attention to detail. It's really, I really like this, and I really get, not pissed. That's too harsh, but I really get fed up if I feel okay. There's like it's just thrown together stuff and people not really caring about stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, dedication to quality is an amazing feat, and unfortunately doesn't usually get that easily to people. It doesn't stick with it. You have to train yourself, and you have to see and experience things the other way to start appreciating those.
But on the other hand, I think if you've experienced it once, that kind of appreciation of quality actually works out and it helps you, and experience the opposite too, you really start to value that. And I mean, especially in the software engineering space where we constantly depend on other people's libraries, we basically depend on other people's dedication to quality, right? And because if you depend on something that's poorly managed, then you have a hard time as well. And so I think that other people value that kind of stuff in code that we release, and also rightfully complain about the fact that we might have missed something that should have been obvious or something. So I'm always trying to get better on that one myself, though. Yeah.
This actually brings me to another question. So Spring Data is a complex project, and it's quite low level, right? Tons of projects depend on that, and they use that. And you have to have really well thought means of verifying the correctness and that it works.
Yeah.
So can you maybe explain a little bit, just not very at length, what type of tests do you run, and maybe what types of issues are the hardest to catch? And if you use like fancy tools, like maybe mutation testing, or I don't know, like symbolic execution of the code, or anything that is like really, really extremely fancy, maybe
Yeah.
our people who watch us would like to learn about that.
I mean, it's basically a multi-layer thing, right? So we try to have a lot of unit tests because they're just like easy to execute, quick to execute, and which if you focus on that, you design your components in a certain way, which then sort of limits the dependencies of individual components, even within the, let's say, Spring Data, the core module or something. On top of that, we of course have like integration tests within the individual stores. So like testing a domain model that runs against an in-memory database, but of course in the JPA case, for example, not against a MySQL or Oracle database, because we assume that being taken care of by the persistence provider. So that's the next level. And we oftentimes, when people report bugs, we actually take their samples and incorporate them into our test base. And the most higher level thing is basically the examples that we have, the example projects that of course are usually test case driven. So I really like the way of crafting an example that actually has executable test cases, because that basically proves that this thing is working. And it's easy to execute for most people, like with a Maven build or something. What might play into this is that I mean we can naturally sort out groups of dependencies by having them in individual modules. So of course the Couchbase module is the only one depending on Couchbase, and the MongoDB one is the only one depending on MongoDB. There are of course some integration issues here and there that we have to take care of, and that requires some effort, but it hasn't been too difficult. It's more of a question when we iterate through the release train. So we have like orchestrated releases of all the modules, and we have very strict rules what we can upgrade in which phase of the release train. So as soon as a release train went GA, so let's say we have the Fowler release train right now, then all of the third-party dependencies are basically fixed to their minor version. And in the service releases that we do for the Fowler release train, we only upgrade to bug fix versions of those transitive dependencies, so that we don't sneak some dependency upgrades into users. But for the major releases of a new release train, we usually try to be on the most up-to-date side of things, so upgrade to the latest versions of libraries. And so there are these rough guidelines, and they've worked out quite well so far. So it's not a too big issue for us, to be honest. I think the core framework, Spring Framework, has or needs to apply quite a few more tricks to actually get it to work with different Hibernate versions or different Jackson versions or what have you. But
okay, sounds reasonable.
Yep.
So nothing too fancy like PyTest or verifying concurrency correctness with super incredible tools?
No, nothing
Other
too
people?
fancy. We have
Okay.
a few benchmarking things, and like with JMH or something, just to make sure we basically get alerted when we accidentally introduce like a performance regression or something.
That's a
But
good point.
that's one. There's like yeah, no, nothing too fancy beyond that actually.
Okay, let's talk about Eclipse a little bit since you're an avid user. Did you so Eclipse Mars was released just
Today, right?
today?
Or
Yeah, I
yesterday?
think today, or it was yesterday. I think it
Yeah.
might have been yesterday, and the milestones have been accessible for
Mm-hmm.
some time now. But it's a 10th release, 10th train of Eclipse
Oh,
release, and it looks awesome by the changelog.
yeah.
Have you had a chance to try that?
Actually, I ran the I upgraded the which I probably wasn't supposed to do, but I upgraded to that release like 2 hours ago or something. But I'm actually using the very recent builds of STS, so basically nightly builds of STS, like or spring-based Eclipse distribution, and depend on whether which Eclipse version they actually build on top of that. And I think Martin, the STS lead, switched to Mars, I think 1 or 2 months ago, and since then I've just used the milestones, and I mean I haven't. There's a few good improvements in the Java 8 support I've seen.
Yep.
That looks way improved. But to be honest, I'm not really using. I mean, I'm I have probably a very concentrated set of stuff that I use. Right, I execute unit tests regularly. I just like debug stuff, but
Yeah.
we're basically building Java libraries. So for me everything is just starting from unit test or starting a main method, and that's basically it. So I'm not using any of the fancy HTML5 features, or I've seen the JavaScript editor has been improved. That's great to see, but it's not really affecting me too much.
One thing they improved is the performance. So allegedly the performance should be much faster. The compiler performance should be a little bit better, especially in
Okay.
cases with generics. They
I
increased.
haven't really suffered from any issues there, to be honest.
I know that Lucas Eder from Duke,
Yeah.
he was not complaining, but he found the issue and he
Yeah.
submitted a
Okay.
ticket.
I mean, cool.
And they improved that. So you didn't notice any particular performance gains.
No, but I might just not be exposed to that kind of like really like generics heavy scenario. I mean, I found that the trick, or one of the tricks being that to increase the heap size. So I have 16 gigabytes of RAM here, so my heap size is of, I think I start with 2 gigabyte and have a max heap size of 4 gigabytes for Eclipse, and
Yep.
that makes it. I mean, that might sound huge, but it makes a huge difference compared to like 512 or just a gigabyte.
Exactly. So previous versions of Eclipse were using some ridiculous small values
Yeah.
for default heap. So and that was actually one of the things that optimizer for Eclipse, the plugin for Eclipse by zero turnaround, that
Yep.
increased automatically.
Yeah.
So I think now they improved that and they
I think they ship with a gigabyte as a default now, but
they ship with a gigabyte by default.
I think Martin mentioned that they were shy to do that because of like Windows restrictions or something, that you can't run because of the 64-bit VMs on Windows. There was something going on that said, okay, if we would change that to a bigger value, that would break quite a few people, and they didn't want to risk that. But yeah, I'm generally, I mean, that's why I'm probably not really looking for anything else. I'm quite satisfied with the way Eclipse works, and there's always stuff to improve, but I guess that's the case everywhere.
Oh, okay. Let's go into the talk about your session a little bit and the demo.
Yeah.
So you showed us a Spring Boot application.
Yeah.
Besides showing, of course, loads of Spring data. So do you, like, and it feels like Spring Boot powers quite a lot of Spring Stack nowadays. So
Yeah.
is it the default future now, and will we see all Spring projects being relocated and transferred to the Spring Boot base, or do you think we'll have a viable alternative?
I mean, there's two aspects to that. One is that all of the Spring Data, the Spring projects, except Spring Boot, will continue to work without Spring Boot. So there's no module, no ecosystem project that will somehow depend on Spring Boot, just because that would create a cyclic dependency between Boot and the project. But Boot is basically it's the primary handle for users to work with Boot with any of the Spring Framework ecosystems, just because it provides us a means to be a bit opinionated, right? Because the frameworks underneath are quite flexible and are able to adapt to even a lot of edge cases that, because some of the older projects need certain kinds of hooks and flexibility. I mean, especially the security project is the best example. There's like 10,000 ways of implementing security in your app, and to adhere to all the possible scenarios, there needs to be a certain kind of flexibility. But that, of course, comes with the cost of like a user that doesn't really care that much. I just want to say, okay, I want to authenticate with HTTP digest against the in-memory database. Just make that simple, right? And with the projects themselves, we didn't really have the means to be that opinionated, and Boot is basically the opinionated layer on top of that, but still allowing the user to opt out of any kind of the convenience mechanisms there, and still take control over everything that they have. That starts with the dependency management, where you get like matching versions out of the box, but you're still flexible to, let's say, upgrade to a new Hibernate version because it has that particular bug fixed that we've been waiting for so long. And it bubbles down into Spring configuration, where you only write the configuration that you really need to, only the things that you want to customize and stuff. And I think Phil there's been a blog post at the Spring Boot 1.3 M1 announcement recently. Phil has built some kind of developer productivity tools into the new version too.
Oh.
So there's a few things that make even startup faster or relaunches faster and whatnot. So it's basically a playground for us to do user experience stuff, or everything user experience related to the framework, and simplify things basically.
Yeah, and it's an awesome effort. I love Spring Boot.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe just a quick controversial question to you. So Spring Data absolutely rules for Java, and you've shown multiple examples, and they are fantastic. What do you think about other JVM languages? So you said you like Groovy. Would Spring Data be also the framework of the choice to organize access to databases in Groovy, or do you think maybe Spring Data could take inspiration from some?
It actually did. And because I mean, if you've seen Grails before and you've seen Gorm, then this looks like vaguely familiar to you. And there's of course, like there is the dynamic finders in Grails that you have, and that works sort of the same way. What Spring Data basically does is, okay, actually some of the stuff has been in Grails before there was even a Spring Data project, or the predecessor that I started like back in 2008. But the thing always was like, okay, you have all this fancy stuff in Groovy and Grails, but there might be some enterprise projects that actually are not able to use like cool things like Groovy for political reasons, right? Because the project manager doesn't allow, or the architect doesn't allow. So what we were looking for was like, okay, how can we actually basically get the same kind of convenience to a statically typed language like Java, which basically means that you need to satisfy the compiler to some degree, which basically brought us to the interface-based approach, and that makes things just work from a Java language point of view, but has similar concepts. Right? That said, there is, if you step out of that Java out of the Java as a language world and into other languages, then that opens up quite a lot of other possibilities. So I mean, there's like I think I've seen that at 2 years ago at a Spring One demoed by Graham. There's like the dynamic predicates that they can execute with Grails. So there's a lot of other fancy stuff that you could do or can do with the other, just by the virtue that it's a dynamic language, right?
Yeah.
Or other tricks, like there's a persistence library that ships with Play, I think, or an approach in the Scala world. So when you get it to a different language, you of course have other possibilities. That doesn't mean that the Spring Data stuff is not, like, it's just working with Scala. I think we had one of the guys who previously worked for us, I think, for I think Spring Source back in the days. There's on the interwebs there's a tutorial by TypeSafe even how to use Spring Data with Scala, which, I mean, might not be the most idiomatic way to do things, but it should just work, right? Because in the end, it's just a Java interface. So there's like certain shades of gray, and depending on how much you're actually into the idiomatics of a certain language, it might make sense to combine one with the other or not. Of course, some people argue that if you're doing Scala and you don't want to do like things like ORMs in the first place and whatnot, and you want to use something more native, is there something Juke-like for Scala or for Groovy? I'm not sure, but there are definitely other libraries that take other approaches to data access, and I think it's just fine. The core market of Spring Data is basically enterprise Java projects, whether they're like plain Java EE projects or Spring projects. And we just like try to help these people out there, and we definitely look left and right and see what the others do and try to incorporate stuff if that makes sense. And I think there's also a Delta Spike project. That's some kind of CDI extension project that has a similar module like the Spring Data JPA module.
I've heard the name.
There's exchange in ideas, and so that's kind of great to see. And yeah, I mean, there's also for the Hibernate guys have a dedicated Hibernate OGM, I think it's called. It's like trying to adapt JPA on top of NoSQL stores, which we as a team decided don't think a good idea. But I mean, that's a world to explore, right? And stuff to try out, and different approaches to try, and then basically see what sticks. So that's
absolutely true. There are smart people working on similar problems in different languages and different frameworks.
Yep.
There are different opinions because, well, everything is a trade-off. We just saw the great demo of Spring Data, and
yep.
I hope people liked it. I liked it. So thank you, Oliver, for your time, for making this virtual JAG session possible.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we are absolutely happy to have you here. And thanks for the interview. It will be posted on the Rebel Labs website at zeroturnaround.com/rebellabs. And well, see you around somewhere on the conference, online, offline, or see you online. Oliver is accessible at Twitter by @Oliver Gierke. So find him, chat with him, follow him. He's an amazing person, and you can learn a lot of great stuff from him. So thanks for listening to us. Thanks for watching the video. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Oleg. Take care.